I was standing at the cruise terminal, suitcases ready at my feet, sunscreen on my face and sunglasses on, ready to embark on a dream vacation with my son and his wife. At least, that is what I thought. Until, suddenly, I received a text message on my phone. "Mom, there has been a change of plans. You are not going on the cruise. We are taking just the family." In that instant, my heart froze. But before I continue, make sure you are subscribed to Grandma's Revenge Tales and write in the comments. Where are you watching this video from? We love knowing how far our stories are reaching. I can still smell the salt in the air from that morning. The port of Miami was packed with excited tourists, dragging suitcases and wearing smiles. I was smiling too, anxious for the family cruise we had been planning for months. At 62 years old, this would be my first trip on a ship, a small dream come true after so much work. My sunscreen was in my straw bag, my new beach hat, 3 dresses bought especially for the formal dinners, the happiness of a simple woman about to realize a modest dream. My son Michael was running late. Nothing unusual. Ever since he married Linda, punctuality had become a luxury item. I sat on a bench near the boarding area and waited, watching families arriving, excited, hugging, united, just like I thought ours would be. That was when my phone vibrated. Message from Michael. "Mom, there has been a change of plans. You will not be coming with us on the cruise. Linda prefers it to be just the family. We will explain better when we get back." I read those words 3, 4, 5 times. My eyes did not believe it, but my heart already knew. I looked up, and there they were, on the upper deck of the ship, Michael, Linda, and my 2 grandkids, Matthew and Sarah. They did not notice I was watching them, or maybe they did and pretended not to. Linda was smiling, fixing her blonde hair while pointing something out to the kids. My son was looking at his phone, probably checking if I had read his message. Just the family. As if I was what? A distant satellite? A stranger? Not the woman who raised him alone, who worked 2 jobs so he could go to good schools, who held him when he came home crying after losing football games. My hands were shaking. I grabbed my suitcases and walked out of that port without looking back. The taxi dropped me home 40 minutes later. I entered the apartment that used to feel cozy and now tasted like abandonment. I threw my bag on the sofa and went straight to my office where I kept all the important documents. In the second drawer, inside a blue folder, was the deed to Michael's house. The house I had bought for them 5 years ago, when they got married. The house where I was not welcome for weekend dinners because Linda needs space to create her own family environment. The house whose last mortgage payment I had paid exactly 2 months ago. The house that was still in my name. They had never cared about that detail. In fact, Michael always said, "It is just paperwork, Mom. We will sort it out later." And I, being naive, believed it was just a matter of time until we formalized the transfer. But now I understood. It was not forgetfulness. It was convenience. I wiped away tears I had not even noticed were falling. I took a deep breath and made a call. "Mr. Henderson, this is Helen Davis. Remember that house I bought for my son? Yes, that one. I need to know what my legal options are." While I talked to my lawyer, a strange calm began to wrap around me. It was not anger, although it was there, throbbing under my skin. It was a clarity I had never felt before, as if suddenly all the pieces fit together. Linda's words about creating healthy boundaries, Michael's growing distance, the comments about me being too intense with the grandkids, the excuses not to include me in celebrations, even the fact that, for the last few Christmases, I received gifts that were increasingly impersonal. A slow cooker, a department store gift card. They were not isolated incidents. It was a pattern. A plan to slowly push me away, keeping only what interested them. My financial support, my availability for emergencies, my name on the documents of the house they could not afford alone. I had been reduced to a function, an emotional and financial ATM. Mr. Henderson confirmed what I already knew. The house was legally mine. I could do whatever I wanted with it. Sell, rent, modify. Everything was in my name, and there was no document promising a future transfer to Michael. How long would it take to complete a sale? I asked, surprising myself with the firmness in my own voice. With an interested buyer? 2 weeks? Maybe less if we expedite the process. The cruise would last 10 days. I opened my laptop and typed an email to Karen, my realtor friend. I need to sell a house quickly. It is a matter of dignity. That night, I did not cry anymore. I made some chamomile tea, sat on the balcony, and watched the Chicago skyline light up. For the first time in years, I was not thinking about Michael, Linda, or the grandkids. I was thinking about me. Who was I before I became Michael's mom or the kids' grandma? I remembered the Helen who loved to dance, who dreamed of seeing Paris, who had friends and interests of her own. The Helen who had been gradually erased to make room for a convenient version of myself, one that fit perfectly in the corners of their lives without bothering anyone, without taking up too much space. That message at the port had not been just an exclusion from a cruise. It had been a cruel reminder that, for them, I was no longer essential. I was disposable, an extra, not family. Well, if that was how they wanted to play, I had my cards too. And it was time to use them. I took my journal and started writing a plan, not for revenge, although there was a bitter taste of justice in all of it. It was for survival. It was for self-love. While their ship moved away from the coast, I began to chart my own course, a course where, for the first time in decades, I was the priority. The following week passed in a whirlwind of calculated actions. Karen, my realtor friend, found an interested couple in just 3 days. Young, no kids, cash buyers. We scheduled a viewing for the next day. I needed an excuse to enter Michael's house. After all, even though it was legally mine, they considered it their home. I used the key I always kept. "For emergencies, Mom," Michael used to say, and I walked in with the strange sensation of invading a space that belonged to me on paper, but not in their hearts. "I came to pick up some plants to take care of while they travel," I told the curious neighbor watching me from the yard. She smiled, believing me. After all, I was Michael's dedicated mother, known by everyone in the neighborhood. Inside the house, I was greeted by silence and memories. I remembered the day I gave them the keys, the emotional hug Michael gave me, the tears of gratitude in Linda's eyes. How had that turned into just family in such a short time? As I walked through the rooms, I noticed the signs of my gradual exclusion. In the photos on the walls, I appeared less and less. In the latest frames, I was not in any of them. On the shelves, no book I had given them was on display. Even the quilt I knitted for them was stored in the closet, replaced by one bought at a department store. In Michael's office, I opened the drawers looking for any document related to the house. That was when I found an envelope with a lawyer's letterhead. Inside, a draft document titled Transfer of Property, dated 3 months ago but never signed or presented to me. The text was clear. They planned to ask for the transfer of the house to their name as soon as the last payment was made. In other words, 2 months ago. But something stopped them. Maybe they calculated I would not accept easily. Or maybe they were waiting for the perfect moment to broach the subject when I was emotionally vulnerable. I put the document in my purse. Evidence. Not that I needed more reasons to go ahead with my plan, but that confirmed my suspicions. It was not forgetfulness. It was a strategy. The next day, the interested couple visited the house. Emily and Robert, both doctors, fell in love with the property. "It is perfect for us," they said, unaware of the drama surrounding those walls. They made an offer above market value, with cash payment and a closing date in 1 week. "Are you sure about this, Helen?" Karen asked when we signed the first papers. "I have never been so sure," I replied, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Mr. Henderson, my lawyer, handled all the legal parts. He explained that, as the registered owner, I had every right to sell the property. "They cannot claim surprise or ignorance, since the property was always clearly in your name," he explained. The sale was concluded in record time. The money was deposited into my account, and the new owners would receive the keys on July 27th, one day before the cruise returned. There was one more detail to resolve. What would they find when they returned? I did not want to just disappear. I wanted them to understand the consequences of their choices. So I wrote a letter. Michael and Linda, the house you called home has been sold. Legally, it was always mine, as you well knew. Just as you knew, I finished paying the mortgage 2 months ago, using my retirement funds. When I received your message saying I was not family enough to join you on the cruise, I finally understood my place in your life. A convenient, peripheral place, available only when necessary. The new owners move in tomorrow. Your personal belongings have been stored in a storage unit paid for 3 months. The key and location are with Mr. Henderson, whose contact is attached. Do not bother looking for me. Just as you needed space to grow as a family, I also need space to rediscover who I am, beyond a disposable mother and grandmother. Helen. I put the letter in an envelope and left it on the kitchen table, where it would surely be the first thing they saw. Next to it, I placed a copy of the house deed and the sales contract. On the last night before handing over the keys to the new owners, I did something I had not done in years. I danced. I put on some classic soul music on my phone and spun around the empty living room, now without furniture, stripped of the fake smiles in the photographs, clean of the unspoken lies. Your family is now homeless, I whispered to the echo of the empty house. That dance was not a celebration of revenge. It was a ritual of liberation. For years, I had defined myself by the roles I played in the lives of others. Michael's mother, Linda's mother-in-law, Matthew and Sarah's grandmother, emotional and financial ATM. Good example, always available, never too much. As I spun around the empty room, I felt the weight of those roles shedding from me. It was as if each turn gave me back a piece of the Helen I once was, the one who had her own dreams, desires, a life beyond serving others. The next day, I handed the keys to Emily and Robert. They were radiant, talking about plans to redecorate, about how they would transform the spare room into a shared office. The energy of this house is special, Emily said. You can feel there was a lot of love here. There was, I replied, but not all love survives convenience. She looked at me without understanding, but smiled anyway. I smiled too, a genuine smile for the first time in days. As I walked out the gate for the last time, I felt a mix of emotions I could not name. It was not exactly peace, nor revenge, nor sadness. It was the painful relief of finally seeing reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. I went back to my apartment in the city and made a call. Mary, I told my sister, that trip to Paris we always dreamed of. How about next month? I hung up before she could answer, forwarding the tickets I had bought that morning. It was time to live my own dreams, not just finance other people's. That night, I slept deeply for the first time since the day at the port. No nightmares, no waking up startled, without that pain in my chest that had accompanied me for weeks. While their ship slowly returned to the coast, I was moving further and further away from that port in Miami where they had left. Not physically, but emotionally. They planned to return to a life that no longer existed. I planned to depart for a life that was just beginning. The flight to Paris was leaving in exactly 30 days, enough time to organize my new life and watch the consequences of my decision from afar, not out of cruelty, but because I needed to understand that this was not a temporary nightmare. It was the reality I had built for myself, one brick of self-denial at a time. 3 days before the cruise returned, I received a text from Michael. Mom, we miss you. The kids ask about you every day. Cannot wait to show you the photos. I smiled bitterly at the phone screen. The hypocrisy was so transparent I could almost see it shining between the words. No apology for the exclusion, no acknowledgement of the wound caused, just the continuity of the script in which I was supposed to play my role. The understanding mother, always ready to forgive. I did not reply. Every unread notification was a small act of rebellion against decades of unconditional availability. The next day, another message arrived, now from Linda. "Helen, we brought you some wonderful Belgian chocolates. Sarah picked them especially for Grandma." Once again, I left it on read. Silence was my only possible response at that moment, because if I started talking, I might not be able to stop, and I was not ready for that confrontation yet. When there were 24 hours left until disembarkation, Michael called. I let it go to voicemail. "Mom, it is weird you are not answering. Is everything okay? We are worried. We arrive tomorrow at 6 p.m. Can we come over for dinner? The kids miss you." The worry in his voice seemed genuine, which made everything even more confusing. How could he exclude me so coldly and then act as if nothing had happened? It was as if we lived in parallel realities. On disembarkation day, I woke up early and went to a coffee shop near the port. From afar, I saw the huge white ship slowly approaching the coast. Somewhere in that floating structure were the people I once called family. I ordered a double espresso and watched the growing movement in the terminal. Anxious families waiting for their loved ones, rideshare drivers holding signs with names, vendors selling water and snacks. At 6:15 p.m., I saw Michael, Linda, and the kids coming down the ramp. They were tanned, smiling, loaded with bags. Sarah was holding a new stuffed animal. Matthew was wearing a t-shirt from some Caribbean island. They looked like the perfect picture of a happy family. I turned around before they could see me. I paid for my coffee and left. I did not need to watch the moment they would read my letter, when they would realize the house was no longer theirs. That would bring me no satisfaction. I went back to my apartment and turned off my phone. Whatever happened in the next few hours, I did not want to be a witness. It was not about torturing them or savoring their confusion. It was about finally creating the space I needed to heal decades of small disappointments. That night, I slept a restless sleep. Part of me still felt guilty, conditioned to put their needs above mine. But another part, the one growing stronger every day, knew I had done what was necessary. At 7:43 the next morning, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Michael. He was alone, with deep dark circles and a pale face. I opened the door without a word. "How could you?" were his first words, his voice trembling between anger and disbelief. "You sold our house without even consulting us?" "It was not our house, Michael. It was mine, always was. It is in the contract you never cared to read." He ran his hands through his hair, disoriented. "But we lived there. We had a life there. The kids grew up in that house, and I had plans to travel with you, to be part of the family." Funny how plans change, right? It was just a trip, Mom. A single trip. No, Michael, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the moment I finally understood my place in your life. Convenient when you need me. Disposable when I am in the way. He threw himself on the sofa, looking suddenly exhausted. "Where are we going to live now?" "Did you think about the kids?" That question ignited something inside me. Decades of sacrifices, of putting his needs above mine. And still, the first worry was not about me, about my feelings, about the pain they caused me. It was about the inconvenience I had created. You have 3 months of storage paid for, enough time to find another place. And yes, I thought about the kids. I thought about what kind of adults they will become, seeing how you treat your own mother. Michael looked at me as if I were a stranger. In a way, maybe I was. The mother he knew, docile, always available, ready to sacrifice everything, had disappeared at the port that day. "Linda is devastated," he said, as if that should matter to me. "And how do you think I felt when I read your message that day? Just family. As if I were a distant acquaintance, not the woman who raised you alone." "It was just an unfortunate choice of words, Mom. It meant nothing." "It meant everything, Michael. And you know it. It was the perfect summary of what I have been feeling for years, that I am only welcome when it is convenient, that my role is to finance dreams, not participate in them. He stood up, pacing nervously around the room. "What do you want from us? An apology? Fine, I am sorry. We are both very sorry. It was insensitive. It was wrong. But selling our house? This is disproportionate. I do not want a forced apology. And it is not about the house. It is about respect. It is about finally understanding my value. And how much is that respect worth? The price of a house?" That question hit me like a slap. Suddenly I saw with crystal clarity what was happening. He was not there because he cared about my feelings or because he understood his mistake. He was there because he needed a roof. You still do not understand, do you? This is not a negotiation. The house was sold. The new owners have already moved in. It is irreversible, just like the damage you caused by excluding me from that trip. And now? What do we do? You guys? I do not know. I am going to Paris in 27 days. I am finally going to live my life, not just exist for yours. Michael looked at me as if he had received a shock. Paris? For how long? I do not know. Maybe a few weeks, maybe months. Maybe I will not come back. He grabbed his phone, hands shaking. I need to tell Linda. She is not going to believe it. Tell her I finally understood what family means. It is something small, closed in on itself, that eventually disintegrates. When Michael left, closing the door behind him, I felt a huge weight being lifted from my shoulders. It was not happiness, nor satisfied revenge. It was simply the relief of finally having said the truths I kept inside for so long. I took my laptop and opened the email from the airline. The ticket to Paris glowed on the screen like a promise, not of escape, but of a new beginning. At 62, I was about to start an entirely new chapter, a chapter where I was the protagonist, not just a secondary character in someone else's story. In the following days, the messages and calls did not stop. Michael, Linda, even mutual friends who were activated to try to bring me to reason. Each notification on my phone made me take a deep breath, gathering strength to stick to my decision. "Helen, you cannot just disappear and leave your son and grandkids on the street," said Martha, a friend of decades, in a WhatsApp audio. "I know they hurt you, but this is disproportionate." Disproportionate. That word followed me, as if there was an exact measure of reaction for every wound, a perfect equation to calculate how much suffering deserved what response. "They are not on the street, Martha," I replied. "They are in a paid storage unit for 3 months. Besides, Michael makes good money. He always said the house was too small for them. Now they have the chance to find something that really suits the family." Even typing those words, I felt a pang of guilt, not for my actions, but for the bitter person I seemed to be becoming. This was not the Helen I knew, or maybe it was, finally released after decades suppressing her true feelings. On the 10th day after the sale of the house, I received a bouquet of flowers. White roses, my favorites, with a handwritten card from Linda. "Helen, I understand your pain, and I apologize sincerely for how we made you feel. Can we talk? Not for us, but for the kids. They miss you." Bringing up the kids was predictable. I knew they would eventually use them as an emotional shield, as a last resort to make me cave. But this time, it would not work, because I missed them too, painfully. But I needed to break the cycle I had created, where my unconditional love was taken for granted and exploited. I put the flowers in a vase, took a photo, and sent it to Linda with a single word: "Thanks." It was not forgiveness, nor an opening for dialogue. It was a civilized acknowledgement of the gesture, nothing more. With 2 weeks left until my trip, I received an unexpected visit. Sarah, my 7-year-old granddaughter, accompanied by the nanny. "Grandma," she ran into my arms as soon as I opened the door. "I missed you so much. Why did you not come visit us at the new house?" My heart shrank. The kids, of course, were not to blame for anything. They were just pawns in this emotional chess game the adults were playing. "I missed you too, my love," I replied, hugging her tight. "I just needed to sort some things out." The nanny handed me an envelope. "Mrs. Linda asked me to give you this personally." Inside, a formal invitation for a dinner at the new house they had rented. To start over as a family, the card said, in elegant handwriting. That night, I sat with my journal and weighed my options. Going to the dinner would signal that everything could go back to normal, that a formal apology was enough to erase years of small humiliations. Not going would confirm the image they were likely building, that of the bitter and vengeful old woman. I picked up the phone and called Michael. "I received the invitation," I said bluntly. "That is great." He sounded genuinely relieved. "So you are coming?" "No, Michael, I am not coming." Silence on the other end of the line. "Mom, we are trying to fix things. What more do you want from us?" "I do not want anything from you, and that is the point. For years you wanted me available when it was convenient and invisible when it was not. Now I am choosing to be unavailable to you and visible to myself." "But what about the kids? They are not to blame for all this." "I agree, and that is why I will keep in contact with them, but on my terms, not yours." "What terms are those?" His voice had a touch of poorly disguised irritation. "I will take them for a weekend with me, once a month, without you two. Just as you wanted a cruise without me, I want time with my grandkids without you." "This is ridiculous, Mom. You are using the kids as bargaining chips." "No, I am setting boundaries. Something I should have done a long time ago." I hung up before he could answer. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or regret. It was the adrenaline of finally confronting the toxic dynamics I had allowed to take root. The next day, Linda appeared at my door. She was dressed impeccably as always, but her face betrayed poorly slept nights. "Helen, can we talk? Just the two of us, woman to woman?" I gestured for her to come in, offered coffee, which she refused, and we sat facing each other in the living room. "What happened to you?" she asked, her tone between worried and accusatory. "This is not the Helen we know." "You are right, it is not. That Helen died at the port when she read her son's text saying she was not family enough for a cruise." Linda lowered her eyes. "It was a terrible mistake. We were stressed with preparations. I was not feeling well with my mother being sick. It was an impulsive decision." Impulsive would be forgetting to tell me about a dinner. Deliberately excluding me from a family trip is a conscious choice, one that reveals exactly what you think about my place in the family. Linda sighed, adjusting the pearl necklace I had given her last Christmas. "We were always grateful for everything you did for us, Helen. The house, the financial support, the help with the kids." "Oh, and is this grateful? Is this how you show gratitude? Treating me like an employee whose services you can dispense with when it is inconvenient?" "It is not fair to put it that way," she protested, her voice trembling. "We have tried to build our own family, our own identity as a couple. Sometimes that means setting boundaries." "Boundaries," I repeated, feeling the bitter taste of the word. Funny how those boundaries never applied when you needed money to renovate the kitchen or when you wanted to leave the kids with me to travel for work. Linda blushed slightly. "I know it seems hypocritical." "It does not seem it, Linda. It is." She took a deep breath as if gathering courage. "What can I do to fix this? We are truly sorry." I looked at her, really looked at her, searching for signs of sincerity in her perfectly made-up face. There was something there, not genuine regret, perhaps, but certainly the understanding of consequences. "There is nothing to fix," I replied calmly. "You made your choices, I made mine. Now we live with them." "But what about the kids? We need to find some stability for them. Like I told Michael, I will remain present in their lives on my terms. Weekends without us?" Her tone betrayed irritation. "As if we are not trustworthy with our own daughters?" "It is not a matter of trust, Linda. It is a matter of building my relationship with them independently of you, just as you built your family independently of me." Linda stood up, smoothing her skirt as she did when she was uncomfortable. "You have changed, Helen." "Yes, I changed. I should have changed a long time ago." After she left, I felt strangely light. I had not screamed. I had not cried. I had simply said the truths that needed to be said, without drama or excessive resentment. The Helen from before would have caved, would have accepted any crumb of reconciliation, starving for approval and inclusion. But this new Helen, or maybe the original Helen who had been suffocated by years of self-denial, demanded respect, not just crumbs of attention. In the following week before my trip, I kept my promise. I picked up Sarah and Matthew to spend a day with me. I took them to the zoo, we bought ice cream, we took silly photos. We talked about everything and nothing. Their school friends, favorite animals, the book Sarah was reading. At no point did I mention their parents or the situation between us adults. They were children. They deserved to be spared from adult drama. When I dropped them back off, Michael was waiting for me at the door, tense. "Did you guys have fun?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "A lot," I replied, maintaining the same forced lightness. "They brought the drawings they made for you." "Thanks for doing this," he said, looking genuinely grateful, "for not pushing them away because of all this." "I would never do that, Michael. I am not like you." The comment hit him as expected, but he just nodded, accepting the blow. "When are you coming back from Paris?" he asked, changing the subject. "I do not know. Maybe never." "Are you serious?" There was genuine panic in his voice. "For the first time in decades, I am putting my needs first. I will stay as long as I need to rediscover myself. What if we need you? What if the kids need you?" I smiled, not with joy, but with the certainty of someone who finally understood their value. "You survived without me for 10 days on a cruise. I am sure you will survive during my trip." The night before my flight to Paris, I did something I had been putting off. I opened the box where I kept all of Michael's keepsakes: childhood photos, school drawings, his first baby shoes. Each item told the story of an unconditional love that had slowly transformed into convenience. I did not throw anything away, nor did I hide the box in the back of the closet. I simply looked at it, acknowledging that those memories were part of me, just like the pain of the recent exclusion. I did not need to deny the past to embrace the future. The next morning, as the taxi took me to the airport, I received a text from Michael. "Safe travels, Mom. We love you even if you do not believe it right now." I did not reply. Not because I did not believe in their love, but because I had learned that love without respect is just an empty word, an excuse to continue harmful behaviors. The plane took off on time at 10:25 a.m. As the city disappeared beneath me, I felt like I was breathing freely for the first time in years. It was not just a geographical trip, it was a journey inward to rediscover the Helen that existed before being Michael's mom or the kids' grandma. The Helen who had her own dreams, desires, a life that was not summarized by serving others. The flight attendant served champagne in business class, a luxury I had allowed myself with part of the money from the house sale. I raised my glass in a silent toast, not to the end of a family, but to the beginning of myself. Paris welcomed me with a light drizzle and gray skies, but even that did not diminish the charm of the moment. Mary, my sister, was waiting at the airport with a colorful umbrella and a huge smile. "Welcome to your new life," she said, hugging me tightly. Mary was always my opposite. She never married, never had kids, built an international career, and had lived between Paris and New York for decades. While I dedicated my life to Michael, she dedicated hers to herself. For years, I felt a veiled superiority regarding her choices, as if my maternal sacrifices were somehow nobler than her selfish life, as we used to call it in our family conversations. Now, at 62, I was beginning to question who had really made the wiser choices. "How do you feel?" Mary asked as her driver took us through Parisian traffic. "Free, scared, guilty, all at the same time." She laughed. "Welcome to real life, sister, where no emotion exists in isolation and all decisions have a price." Mary's apartment was in Le Marais, a historic district full of galleries, cafes, and independent designer shops. Her sophisticated lifestyle had always seemed extravagant to me, almost frivolous. Now I saw how she had created a life that reflected exactly who she was, without concessions, without unnecessary sacrifices. "I prepared the guest room, but I think we need to find your own space soon," she said, showing me the beautiful room overlooking an internal courtyard. "How long do you plan to stay?" "I do not know," I replied honestly. "I never planned anything beyond selling the house and buying the ticket." "Perfect," Mary smiled. "The best journeys are the ones without a defined script." In the following days, I immersed myself in Paris like a thirsty person in an oasis. We visited museums, sat in cafes watching people, walked for hours along the Seine. I absorbed every moment like a sponge, filling the void I did not even know existed inside me. My phone remained mostly off. I turned it on only once a day, usually at night, to check important messages and make a short video call with Sarah and Matthew. Conversations were always light, focused on their daily activities and my discoveries in Paris. We never talked about the situation with their parents or when I would return. A week after my arrival, Mary organized a dinner with some of her friends, artists, writers, university professors, fascinating people living intense and meaningful lives well beyond their 60s. "This is my sister Helen." She introduced me to an elegant woman with gray hair. She finally discovered there is life beyond being a mother and grandmother. At another time, I would have been offended by that description, but that night, between laughter and glasses of red wine, I recognized the truth in her words. "And what do you do, Helen?" asked Philip, a comparative literature professor. "I am rediscovering who I am," I replied, surprised by my own honesty. I spent decades being defined by my roles in others' lives. Now I am writing my own definition. "Ah, a journey of self-discovery," he smiled, "the most important of all travels." That night was revealing. For the first time in decades, I was seen and appreciated as Helen, not as someone's mother, someone's grandmother, someone's mother-in-law, just Helen, with opinions, stories, and dreams of her own. The next day, Mary surprised me with a proposal. "I have a friend renting a small apartment in the 11th arrondissement. Nothing fancy, but with all the Parisian charm. Do you want to see it?" "Rent? For me? But I do not know how long I will stay." "Exactly why. No long-term commitment. Just a place of your own while you decide the next steps." The apartment was a typical Parisian studio. Small but perfectly organized, with tall windows letting in the golden autumn light. Old wooden floors that creaked slightly underfoot. A tiny but functional kitchen. "It is perfect," I whispered, feeling that space symbolized exactly where I was in life. A transitional place, but mine, a beginning. That same afternoon, I signed a 3-month contract, renewable. With part of the money from the house sale, I could afford this transition time without immediate financial worries. After 2 weeks in Paris, I received an email from Mr. Henderson. Michael had hired a lawyer and was threatening to contest the sale of the house, claiming there was a verbal agreement that the property would eventually be his. "Do not worry," wrote Mr. Henderson. "Without formal documentation, there is nothing they can legally do. The sale was completely legitimate." Still, the news affected me. Not because of the fear of losing the legal battle, which I knew was non-existent, but because of the confirmation that Michael still had not understood. He continued to see the situation as an injustice against him, not as a consequence of his own actions. That night, I called him for the first time since my departure. "Why the lawyer, Michael?" "Mom!" He sounded genuinely surprised to hear my voice. "Where are you? We were worried." "In Paris, as I said I would be." "Why did you hire a lawyer?" Silence on the other end, then a sigh. "Because it is not fair. That house was our home. We had an agreement." "What agreement, Michael? The one that existed only in your head? Or the one you planned to impose on me after I finished paying the mortgage?" "What are you talking about?" I found the draft of the property transfer in your office, dated 3 months ago. Never presented to me. You were waiting for the right moment to pressure me, right? More silence. It was Linda's idea, he finally admitted, his voice low. She thought we should make the situation official, since we had lived there for years, and you always said the house was for us. And you decided that without consulting me, just like you decided I was not family enough for the cruise. Those are completely different situations. No, Michael, they are exactly the same. In both cases, you made decisions about my life, my feelings, and my property, without considering me worthy of participating in the conversation. I heard him take a deep breath, like he had done since he was a boy trying to control frustration. And now? Are we going to live in this standoff forever? You in Europe, resentful, and us here trying to rebuild our lives? I am not resentful, Michael. I am finally living my own life, not the one you designed for me as a convenient supporting role. And I suggest you withdraw the lawsuit. It will be embarrassing for you when it gets dismissed. You have changed, Mom. I do not recognize you anymore. Maybe you never really knew me, only the version of me that was convenient for you. After hanging up, I cried for the first time since arriving in Paris. Not for the house, not for the lawsuit, not even for the fractured relationship with my son. I cried for the Helen who had spent decades suffocated under layers of other people's expectations. For the woman I could have been if I had set healthy boundaries from the start. The next morning, Mary found me on the balcony watching the street activity with a cup of coffee. "Rough night?" she asked, noticing my puffy eyes. "Michael hired a lawyer. He wants to contest the house sale." Mary let out a dry laugh. "Of course he does. When people lose their privileges, they call it injustice." "He is my son, Mary, despite everything. Yes, and you love him, but loving does not mean letting yourself be exploited. You did not take anything that was rightfully his. You only stopped giving what was rightfully yours." Her words resonated deeply. All my life I had confused love with sacrifice, generosity with self-denial, as if loving meant necessarily diminishing oneself, becoming less so, the other could be more. But true love, for others and for oneself, did not demand that imbalance. It did not ask me to disappear so others could shine. That afternoon, I did something I had never done before. I signed up for a watercolor painting course, a teenage passion I had abandoned when I got pregnant with Michael, considering it a frivolous hobby incompatible with maternal responsibilities. The studio was in an old building in Montmartre, with huge windows framing the rooftops of Paris like a living painting. The teacher, an older man with white hair and ink-stained hands, welcomed us with a gentle smile. "Watercolor is like life," he said, demonstrating a smooth brushstroke. "You can guide the water, but never completely control it. The beauty lies in accepting the unpredictable paths it chooses." While mixing colors and watching them flow across the paper, I had an epiphany. That was exactly what I was learning to do with my own life. Guide, not control, accept the unpredictable, find beauty in unexpected paths. By the end of the class, I had created a small landscape, imperfect certainly, but vibrant with colors and possibilities, just like the new chapter I was beginning to write for myself. Autumn in Paris transformed the trees into explosions of red and gold, as if the whole city were celebrating my personal transformation. The days grew shorter, but somehow my hours seemed fuller, more meaningful. I established a routine that was exclusively mine. I woke up early, had coffee at a small bakery on the corner, where the owner already recognized me and saved a warm croissant. I walked through different parks every day, attended my watercolor classes twice a week, and at night often dined with Mary and her friends, or simply stayed in my small apartment, reading or painting. It was a simple life, but completely mine. Every decision, every moment was chosen by me and for me. Weeks passed and the frequency of Michael's messages gradually decreased. Mr. Henderson informed me that he had dropped the lawsuit, finally accepting he had no grounds to contest. I continued making regular video calls with Sarah and Matthew, but even those became less frequent as they adapted to the new family dynamic. In mid-November, I received an unexpected email from Linda. "Helen, I hope you are well in Paris. The photos you send the kids are beautiful. They love showing their friends where Grandma is living now. I am writing to apologize. Generally, this time. Not for the practical inconveniences we caused each other, but for the emotional damage we caused you over the years. Michael and I have been in couples therapy since you left. It was not easy to face certain truths about ourselves, about how we treated you, about the toxic patterns we established. The therapist helped us see how we normalized manipulative and selfish behaviors, disguising them as setting healthy boundaries or building our own family. The truth is, we took your generosity for granted. Worse, we exploited it consciously, knowing you would never say no, never set firm boundaries, never demand reciprocity. I do not expect you to forgive or forget, nor am I asking you to come back or restore the previous situation. I just wanted you to know that your drastic decision forced us to confront painful truths and start real changes. Michael has trouble expressing this, so I am taking the liberty to speak for both of us. He's still processing a lot of anger and guilt, but he is making progress. The kids are fine. We miss you, but we respect your journey. Sincerely, Linda." I read the email several times, trying to discern manipulation disguised as sincerity, but something in those words sounded different from previous attempts at reconciliation. There were no implied requests, no mention of the house or financial situation, no attempt to use the kids as emotional leverage. I showed the email to Mary during dinner that night. "What do you think?" I asked as she read attentively. "It seems sincere," she finally said, handing back my tablet. "But the important question is, what do you think?" I reflected for a moment. "I think they are finally understanding, not just what I did, but why I did it." "And does that change anything for you?" "I do not know," I replied honestly. "I am not ready to forgive completely, nor to go back to the previous dynamic." "Nor should you," Mary affirmed, pouring more wine into our glasses. "Forgiveness, when it comes, should be for your own peace, not for their comfort. And regardless of forgiveness, you must never again accept being treated like before." I nodded, absorbing the wisdom of her words. That night, I replied briefly to Linda. "Thank you for the email. I appreciate the honesty and acknowledgement. I am also on a journey of self-discovery and healing. I am glad you are seeking professional help. The kids are always welcome in my life, as is honest communication between us adults. Helen." Short, without promises or concessions, but also without hostility. A small step toward something new, not a restoration of the past, but perhaps the construction of a different future. December arrived with Christmas lights transforming Paris into a fairy tale city. My watercolor class organized a small end-of-year exhibition, and to my surprise, 2 of my pieces were selected. Nothing grand, just a small gallery in Le Marais, but for me it represented something monumental, the recognition of my value beyond family roles. On the day of the exhibition opening, I stood in front of my framed watercolor, a view of the Seine at sunset, with shades of blue and purple merging on the horizon. It was not technically perfect, but it captured something real, a moment of peace I had experienced alone, sitting by the riverbank. "It is beautiful," said a familiar voice behind me. I turned, stunned, and there was Michael. "What are you doing here?" I asked, almost breathless with surprise. "Linda saw the exhibition invitation on your Facebook. I thought maybe it was time for a face-to-face conversation." He looked different, thinner, with subtle dark circles under his eyes, but also with a softer, less defensive expression. "Did you come alone?" "Yes, Linda stayed with the kids. She understood we needed this time, just the 2 of us." We left the gallery and walked to a nearby cafe. The night was cold but clear, with a starry sky rarely seen in the illuminated city. "Your painting is really beautiful," he said when we sat down with steaming hot chocolates. "I did not know you painted." "I did not either," I replied with a faint smile. "There are many things about me that you do not know, that I did not know myself." He nodded, stirring the chocolate with his spoon. "I have thought a lot about that, about how I never really saw you as a complete person, with desires and dreams of your own. You were just Mom, an extension of myself somehow." The disarming honesty took me by surprise. This was not the defensive Michael I had left behind. "Therapy seems to be working," I commented. He gave a small smile. "It is hard, painful actually, confronting patterns I did not even know I had, seeing how I treated the person who loved me most in the world. I still love you, Michael. That never changed." "I know. And I abused that love for years." He paused, taking a sip of chocolate. "I did not come to ask you to come back or undo what you did. I came to say I understand, and that I am trying to change, to be better." We sat in silence for a few moments, letting those words float between us. "Are the kids okay?" I asked finally. "Yes, they miss you, but they are adapting. Sarah has kept every photo you send in a special album. And you two, the new house. It is smaller, simpler, but it is working. Linda went back to working part-time. We are learning to live with less, to value what really matters. I am sorry it had to be so hard for you." He shook his head. "Do not be sorry. It was necessary. Painful, yes, but necessary. Like surgery to remove something toxic." His words echoed something I had felt myself, that feeling that pain was necessary for healing, that some wounds needed to be opened to finally heal correctly. "When do you go back to Chicago?" I asked. "Tomorrow. It was a quick trip, just to see you for this conversation." "And what happens now between us?" Michael thought for a moment. "I do not know. I think we start over somehow. Not like before. That would be impossible and unhealthy. But maybe we can build something new based on mutual respect this time." I nodded, feeling a complex mix of emotions. It was not complete forgiveness, nor immediate reconciliation. It was something more nuanced, more mature. The recognition that relationships, like people, can evolve and change. "I would like you to meet my friends here in Paris," I said impulsively. "Mary is organizing a Christmas dinner next week." "I would love that," he smiled. "But I have to get back to Linda and the kids. Maybe next time. Are you spending Christmas here?" "Yes, Mary and I have plans." "I understand." He seemed genuinely disappointed but did not push. "Maybe we can do a video call that day. The kids would love it." "I would love that," I replied sincerely. When we said goodbye at the cafe door, he hugged me. Not the quick, automatic hug that had become our habit in recent years, but a real, long, heartfelt hug. "I love you, Mom," he whispered in my ear. "I am sorry for everything." "I love you too, son," I replied, letting a few tears escape finally. "I always have." As I watched him walk away down the street lit by Christmas lights, I felt something untie inside me. It was not complete forgiveness. That would still take time. But it was the beginning of healing. For him, for me, for our broken relationship. That night, I painted late in my small apartment. It was not the Seine this time, nor Paris. It was a Mexican beach with turquoise waters and golden sand. A place I once took Michael as a child, where we built sandcastles that the tide inevitably washed away. I called the painting Reconstruction. Christmas in Paris was magical in a way I had never experienced before. Mary decorated her apartment with a small pine tree loaded with vintage ornaments. Golden lights illuminated the windows, and the aroma of mulled wine filled the air. Her friends gathered for a sophisticated but cozy dinner, bringing dishes from their own family traditions. On Christmas morning, we had the promised video call with Michael, Linda, and the kids. They had organized a special breakfast, with the table decorated and gifts wrapped with my name on them. "To open when you come back," Sarah explained with bright eyes. The conversation was surprisingly easy, without the tension I expected. Linda seemed different too, less polished and perfect, more authentic somehow. She proudly showed me the decoration of the new house, smaller but cozy, with personal touches revealing more personality than the impersonal mansion they had inhabited before. "When are you coming back, Grandma?" asked Matthew, leaning into the camera with hopeful eyes. I looked at Mary, who was watching the video call with discreet interest, and then back at the screen. "I have not decided yet, sweetheart. I am learning a lot here, rediscovering things about myself." "Like painting?" Michael said with a smile. "I showed them photos of your exhibition." "Yes, I want to learn too," Sarah exclaimed. "Can we take classes together when you come back?" "I would love that," I replied, feeling a wave of tenderness. "Maybe we can find a teacher in Chicago." After the video call, Mary and I went for a walk along the Champs-Élysées, admiring the festive decorations and the bustle of families enjoying the holiday. "They seem really different," Mary commented. "Humbler." "Yes," I agreed. "I think they are really trying. Therapy, the new financial reality, maybe even the shock of losing me suddenly. All that seems to have awakened something in them." "And does that change your plans?" Mary asked, linking her arm in mine as we walked. I reflected for a moment. "I do not know if I have plans exactly, more of a direction than a destination." Very philosophical." She laughed. "But seriously, are you thinking about going back to Chicago?" "Eventually, yes. This is a wonderful chapter, but not the whole book of my life. My grandkids are there, part of my heart too. But not on the same conditions as before," Mary stated, not as a question, but as a confirmation. "Definitely not. I will never again be that invisible Helen, convenient only when needed." We stopped in front of a dazzling window display, contemplating our reflections mixed with the twinkling Christmas lights. Two middle-aged women, similar in features but so different in life experiences, united by blood and shared history. "You know what impresses me most about this whole story?" said Mary, adjusting her red scarf. "It is not the revenge itself, although it was masterfully executed. It is how you emerged from it. Many people become bitter, consumed by resentment, even when they win. But you blossomed." Her words touched me deeply, because they captured exactly what I had begun to realize myself. The sale of the house had not been the end of the story, but the beginning. It was not about punishing Michael and Linda, but about freeing myself from the invisible chains I had helped forge over the years. January arrived with light snow covering Parisian rooftops, transforming the city into a winter wonderland. My rental contract was coming to an end, and I needed to make a decision: renew for 3 more months or return to Chicago. On a particularly cold afternoon, walking through the almost deserted Luxembourg Gardens, I made my decision. It was time to go back, not out of obligation or guilt, not ceding to family pressure, but because I was ready to build the next chapter of my life. One that included my family, but also much more. I called Michael that night and shared my decision. "I am coming back in February," I said, "but with some conditions." "Which ones?" His voice showed a mix of joy and caution. "I am going to maintain my independence. I already rented an apartment near yours, but I do not want to live with you nor be a full-time babysitter." "I understand and respect that," he replied promptly. "I want to keep painting. I found a studio in the city that offers classes similar to the ones I have here." "Of course, Mom. Your time is yours. And we need to set clear boundaries and mutual respect. All of us. Even the kids need to understand that Grandma has her own life." "We are working on that in therapy," he said, "learning about healthy boundaries, not just to protect ourselves, but to respect others too." The ease with which he accepted my conditions confirmed what I had already perceived. Something fundamental had changed, not just in me, but in him too. maybe in all of us. The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. Sending some paintings and books by mail, packing suitcases, saying goodbye to the new friends I had made. Paris had given me so much in such a short time, not just memories and skills, but a renewed version of myself. On the last night before my departure, Mary organized a farewell dinner. During the toast, she looked deeply into my eyes and said, "To my sister Helen, who proved it is never too late to reinvent oneself." On the flight back to Chicago, I reflected on the extraordinary journey of the last few months. I had left as a wounded woman seeking revenge, but was returning as someone much more complex. A woman with clear boundaries, with her own passions, with a new understanding of her value beyond family roles. Revenge had been just the catalyst, the necessary push for a much deeper transformation. Michael and the kids were waiting for me at the airport with handmade signs and genuine smiles. Linda was there too, more reserved but visibly trying. I hugged everyone, feeling the familiar warmth mixed with a new dynamic still forming. "Welcome back," said Michael, carrying my bags. Or maybe I should say, "Welcome to a new beginning." "I like that," I replied, smiling. "A new beginning for all of us." In the following weeks, we gradually established our new dynamic. Weekly family dinners where we talked about real issues, not just superficialities. Special days with the grandkids, where I took them to parks, museums, and yes, watercolor classes Sarah had asked for so much. And, most importantly, time for myself. My cozy apartment, my studio 3 times a week, new friends, a life that was truly mine. Michael and Linda continued in therapy, learning to build a healthier relationship not just with me, but between themselves. The loss of the house, although traumatic, had forced a reevaluation of priorities that was slowly transforming them into better people. On a particularly pleasant Sunday, 6 months after my return, we were all gathered for lunch on the patio of their apartment, smaller than the old house, but much cozier. I watched the scene with a feeling of peace I never imagined possible after that day at the port. Michael grilling, Linda setting the table, the kids playing on the grass, me contributing a dessert I had learned to make in Paris. "You know what I'm thinking?" said Michael, approaching with a glass of wine. "I never properly thanked you." "Why?" "For being strong enough to force us to change, for not accepting being treated that way. If you had just caved like you always did, we would have stayed trapped in that toxic cycle." His words surprised me. I had never thought of my revenge as a gift to them too, but in a way it had been. The pain of loss, the humiliation, the forced awakening, all that had created space for something new and potentially better. "I still miss it sometimes," he continued, looking at the skyline. "The house, it was nice, spacious, but I realized it was never really a home. It was more of a trophy, a status symbol. This place," he gestured to the small garden where we were, with its imperfections and limited space, "feels much more like ours." I nodded, understanding perfectly what he meant. Sometimes we lose something valuable only to discover that what is truly precious was somewhere else. "Sometimes I wonder," I said, "if I would have found the courage to change if I had not been so drastically excluded that day. If I would have rediscovered painting, Paris, my independence." "I cannot change what I did," Michael replied, his voice choked up. "But I can promise I will never make you feel invisible again." "That is all I ever wanted," I replied honestly. "To be seen, not just as a mother or grandmother, but as Helen." That afternoon, when I was painting with Sarah in the small studio I had set up in my apartment, she asked me an unexpected question. "Grandma, did you forgive Daddy and Mommy for not taking you on the cruise?" I paused, looking for words a child could understand, but that were still true. "You know, Sarah, forgiving does not mean pretending something painful did not happen or that it did not matter. It means deciding not to let that pain control your future. And yes, I am forgiving a little more every day." Like in your paintings, she said, surprising me with her insight. When you make a mistake, you cannot erase it, but you can turn the mistake into something beautiful. I smiled, amazed at the wisdom of this 8-year-old child. Exactly like that, my love. Exactly like that. Life continued its flow, with new patterns establishing themselves. I was no longer the infinite source of financial and emotional support for Michael and Linda, nor did I want to be. But I was a constant and valuable presence in their lives, especially for my grandkids. I was also a developing artist, a friend, a traveler, a woman rediscovering dormant passions and cultivating new ones. The house I sold was never mentioned again, as if we all tacitly understood it represented a closed chapter in our lives. The new owners had renovated it extensively. Once we passed by it during a walk and barely recognized it. "Looks like a different life," Michael commented. "It was," I replied simply. On my 63rd birthday, I received a surprising gift from Michael and Linda, a ticket to Italy and enrollment in a painting workshop in Tuscany. "So you can continue your journey," the card accompanying the gift read, "with all our love and respect." Looking at the envelope with the tickets, I realized I had completed a full cycle. The pain of that day at the port had been transformed into something completely unexpected. Freedom, not just physical or financial, but the inner freedom to finally live as the woman I was always meant to be. The revenge had been just the beginning. The rebirth that followed, that was the true triumph. Now, if you like this story, click on this next video appearing on the screen, because in it is a story of betrayal and payback like you have never seen before.